A year ago, America fell in love with a singing janitor from Terre Haute.
Everybody saw the janitor, the mop, the golden confetti. Almost nobody saw what came before it or what came after.
I never dreamed when I got on that plane that how much life could change.
By the time Richard Goodall walked onto that stage, he had spent 23 years cleaning school hallways in Terre Haute, Indiana, and had already buried the person his whole life was built around.
We found out more about a life-changing event that he could never have anticipated.
And somewhere else, an older man was watching him sing on television and deciding he liked the guy, with no idea he was looking at his own son. What America got was the highlight reel. This is everything the highlight reel left out. The hallway voice. The kids knew him first. In the Vigo County School Corporation in Terre Haute, Indiana, there was a custodian who sang while he worked. He waxed floors and wiped tables and cleaned lockers, and the sound carried down the tile. They called him Mr. Richard. Every Veterans Day, he would sing "God Bless the USA," and for a few minutes, the gym would go completely still, and then he would go back to his cart and finish his rounds. That was the whole arrangement. Nobody treated it as a career. He worked in 3 or 4 different buildings over the years, most recently a middle school a few blocks from his house. Here is the thing about being told you are talented every single day by a hallway full of 9-year-olds. You assume they are being kind. You assume kids say that to everybody. It took Richard Goodall the better part of 2 decades to consider that they might have been telling him something true, and by then, he had already spent most of his working life in those hallways. 23 years. 23 years is a long time to hold a job that most people walk past without seeing. And it was not that music had never been part of his life. It had been constantly, quietly, for as long as he could remember. He grew up singing along to a Radio Shack stereo, the kind of setup a kid saves up for and treats like an instrument. In the 90s, he was doing karaoke nights around town, then the local radio station contest circuit. He sang with 2 gospel trios. He was, by any honest measure, a working singer who happened to have a day job that paid the bills. Then the pandemic hit, and all of it stopped. The trios, the bars, the contests. The part of his life where he stood in front of people and sang simply closed, and he went back to being a man with a mop and a schedule. For a lot of men in their 50s, that is the ending. What makes Richard different is what happened when life did not stop there, and instead got significantly worse. The year everything stopped. In June of 2021, Richard lost his wife Patty to cancer. They had been married a long time, decades. She was the structure his ordinary life was built on. And when she died, he did not just lose a partner, he lost the map. He has talked about it since, with a plainness that is hard to sit with. When you are married that long and they pass away, the void is not the worst part. The worst part is trying to work out who you even are without them. And that is a brutal question for a man whose identity was already modest. He was a custodian. He was a husband. Take one of those away, and there is not much left standing. There was no dream project waiting in the wings, no plan B, no manager on the phone. There was a house that was suddenly too quiet, and a job that started early. He did not sing for months. This is where the story splits away from the tidy underdog version everybody shares. It skips the part where the man had to first decide whether he wanted to keep going at all. What he did next was so small that nobody noticed it happening. The karaoke bridge. A few months after Patty died, Richard went to a bar on karaoke night, and he sang. That is the whole event. No cameras, no producers, no golden anything. A grieving man in a small Indiana city walked into a room full of strangers and put his name on a list. He has described music as the bridge. And that word is exact. Not an escape and not a career move. A bridge. Something you use to get from one side of a terrible thing to the other side, where the rest of your life is waiting. He kept going back. Week after week, song after song, one of the loudest voices in the Wabash Valley quietly rebuilding himself in a bar. Nobody was filming. That matters. Everything that came later depended on a man who kept showing up when there was absolutely no reward for it. If this is landing for you, take a second and subscribe, because the next part is where a hallway singer accidentally becomes a national story, and the way it actually happened is stranger than the version you have heard. New Year's Day. The bar had a Facebook page, and like a lot of small venues, it posted clips of whoever brought the house down that week. Richard kept showing up in those posts. A woman named Angie Vanovan followed the page. She saw him. On New Year's Day of 2022, the two of them started talking. Angie became the second engine of this entire story. Keep her in mind, because in about 18 months, she is the only reason he gets on a plane at all. The video. In 2022, the teachers at his school asked him to sing at an event. This was routine by then, but this time they added something. Instead of the usual patriotic standard, they told him to pick whatever song he wanted. He picked "Don't Stop Believin'." One of the teachers stood off to the side of the room with her phone up and recorded the whole thing, and later that day she put it on TikTok. She had fewer than 1,000 followers. A day or so later, the kindergarten teachers came looking for him in the hallway, mid-shift, to tell him the video was at 100,000 views. He genuinely did not know whether that was good. He asked. For a woman with under 1,000 followers, they told him, it was not just good, it was impossible. By the end of the weekend, it was past 1 million. Then the comments started arriving from places that made no sense. Howie Mandel, a judge on America's Got Talent, reacted to the clip and said out loud that this man needed to be on the show. And then Steve Perry, the actual voice of Journey, the man Richard had been singing along to since he was a kid in front of a Radio Shack stereo, saw the video and left a note saying he loved it. Sit with that. The song he had loved his entire life came back around and told him he was doing it right, which made what he almost did next completely absurd. First flight. America's Got Talent producers found the video and reached out. Richard nearly said no. This is not false modesty, and it is not a beat invented for a documentary. He was in his mid-50s. He had never been on an airplane in his life. He was a custodian from Terre Haute, being asked to fly to California and stand in front of the most famous judging panel on television. And every instinct he had said that this was not for people like him. So it falls to Angie in their own kitchen, with him doing the math out loud. All the reasons a man his age with his job does not do this. She is not having any of it. She tells him to get on the plane. Not maybe, not think about it. Get on the plane. And then she goes further than encouragement and tells him flatly that he is going to win the whole thing, which is an insane sentence to say to a school custodian standing in his own kitchen, and she says it like she is reading it off a page. So he flew, for the first time ever, to Los Angeles. He stayed in Pasadena on a budget so thin it barely covered the trip. The audition was taped in late March of 2024, months before anyone at home would see a second of it. There was one more detail. Before the taping, he told producers there was exactly one judge he did not want to talk to, and that judge was Simon Cowell, which is, of course, precisely who was assigned to introduce him to the theater. The golden buzzer. He walked out visibly nervous. Cowell asked if he was feeling it. and Richard said this had been a long time coming, and Cowell told the room he hoped this guy was good. Then the piano riff started. You have probably seen what happens next. The room comes up off its seats before he reaches the chorus. Heidi Klum hits the golden buzzer, gold confetti falls out of the ceiling, and a 54-year-old school janitor is standing in the middle of it with no idea what to do with his hands. Klum called him humble and kind, a quiet man who turns into a rock star the second he gets behind a microphone. Cowell said the country needed a hero, and that Richard was it. The audition aired on the 28th of May, 2024, 2 months to the day after it was taped. 2 days later, he was back at work in Indiana, cleaning the inside and outside of lockers at West Vigo Middle School, while messages from strangers around the world piled up faster than he could read them. That detail is the whole man. Golden buzzer on Tuesday, lockers on Thursday. And while he was still emptying bins in that hallway, his hometown was already doing something he had no idea about. The watch parties. Terre Haute did not treat this as a celebrity story. It treated it as family going out to represent them. Signs went up along 3rd Street downtown. Every school in the district put messages on their marquees. And when the live shows came around, the convention center filled with people who had come to watch a television broadcast together in a room, the way towns used to watch moon landings. His principal, watching it all from inside the building, described the whole thing as a whirlwind and said the man they saw on television was identical to the man they saw pushing a cart down the hallway every morning. The city eventually handed him a key to the city, which is a strange object to give a man who already had keys to every door in the building. But the town was only reacting to what it could see. The songs he was choosing week after week were telling a much more private story, if you knew what you were listening to. The songs he chose. The song list across that season reads like his life. In the quarterfinals, he sang "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You," the Michael Bolton ballad, and he dedicated it to Angie. That is a man who lost his wife in 2021, standing on national television, singing about surviving without someone, and dedicating it to the woman who had helped him back. Later in the season, he took on "Eye of the Tiger," which is a punishing song for any vocalist and a slightly absurd one for a 55-year-old custodian, and he carried it. For the finale, he chose "Faithfully," another Journey song, and specifically the song that belonged to him and Angie. He has described the logic simply. He started this with Journey, so he would finish with Journey and close the book properly. But 6 days before that finale, he did something that had nothing to do with the competition and changed the meaning of every song left in it. Malibu Vows. On the 18th of September, 2024, Richard and Angie got married in Malibu. Not a big production. He flew in Angie's sister, his best friend, his grandson, and the behind-the-scenes crew who had become something like family over the season. They had dinner on the beach afterward. He announced it himself, telling everyone that as of 3 in the afternoon Pacific time, they were now Richard and Angela Van Goodall. He said later that he already felt like a winner before the results were ever read. Which means that a man who 3 years earlier was sitting alone in a house after burying his wife had just gotten married on a beach in California, days before the biggest night of his life. The final night, on the 24th of September, 2024, Richard Goodall performed "Don't Stop Believin'" on the America's Got Talent finale stage, alongside Neil Schon and members of Journey. The kid with the Radio Shack stereo sang the song with the band that made it. He beat out 9 other finalists. By most accounts, it came down to him and a dog act reported to be from Israel. When the name was called, Heidi Klum crossed the stage to hug him before anything else could happen. He won the $1 million in a car, and he was widely described as the first singer in 5 years to take the whole thing. And then the cameras switched off. Most people who win something like this are never seen again, and what Richard did the following Monday morning tells you exactly who he is. Back to work. He and Angie used the winnings to pay cash for their house in Terre Haute. Their house, in their town, owned outright, no mortgage. She promptly put him to work planting tomatoes and cucumbers, and he kept his job. For a long stretch after winning $1 million on national television, Richard Goodall was still waxing floors at a school in Vigo County. The fame, in his description, wore off fast at work because the kids saw him every morning and he was still just Mr. Richard. He has said the strangest part of winning was that for the first time in his life, nothing ahead of him was written down. A year earlier, he was the guy who took out the trash and wiped the tables. Around that, he built the career he never let himself imagine. An opening slot for Howie Mandel in Las Vegas. A YMCA fundraiser at home to send local kids to summer camp. An original single of his own, called A Long Time Coming, which is the exact phrase he had said to Simon Cowell before he had proved anything to anybody. And a return to that same stage for the show's 20th anniversary. But none of that is the part of this story that should stop you cold. That happened quietly, off camera, and it started with a search Angie was running at home. The father found Richard was adopted as an infant. He grew up in Terre Haute with the family who raised him, and for more than 5 decades, that was the entire file. In 2025, with Angie doing the ancestry research, he found his biological father. A man named Hubert Dunn, a retired K-9 police officer and Army veteran, who had no other children and who had never known Richard existed. However that conversation opened, and whatever either of them expected from it, the first thing Hubert had to say was not about family at all. He already knew the face. He had seen him on television. He asked whether Richard was that janitor guy. And Richard told him, "Yes, sir, that was me. That was the show." Think about the mechanics of that for a second. A man watches a talent show, forms an opinion about a singing custodian, remembers him. Then, sometime later, he learns that the stranger he liked on television is his son, and that he has been quietly rooting for his own child without knowing it. The video that a teacher with under 1,000 followers posted on a whim did not just put Richard on a stage. It made him findable. It put his face in front of the one man in the country who had spent 55 years not knowing there was a face to look for. $1 million is the smaller prize in that sentence. What it means, so what actually sits underneath the singing janitor story. It is not that talent gets discovered. Plenty of people can sing. It is not that a viral video changes your life, because thousands of videos go viral every week and change nothing at all. It is that a man who had lost his wife, lost his music, and lost the shape of his own life walked into a bar on karaoke night with no reason to believe anything would come of it and sang anyway. Everything else here is downstream of that one unglamorous decision. The teacher with the phone, the golden confetti, the beach in Malibu, the father who never knew he was watching his son. All of it required that he first show up when there was nothing in it for him. He was 54 when he got on his first airplane. That is a lot of life to spend assuming the big thing is meant for other people. That is the part worth carrying out of this, not the $1 million. The bar on a Tuesday. If this story hit you the way it hit me, subscribe so you do not miss the next one, and tell me down in the comments. What is the thing you have been talking yourself out of because you decided you were too old, too ordinary, or too late for it? I read every one.